Natural gas has long been touted as the future of energy. But for Iraq and the Basrah Gas Company, with bold ambitions to increase the amount of power it supplies to the people of Iraq and beyond, gas could really be the future of Iraq. You're listening to the Business Extra podcast coming from the National in Abu Dhabi. I'm Mustafa Al-Rawi, Assistant Editor-in-Chief. If you like this show, please do subscribe at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your audio content. As I mentioned, we're looking at Iraq, its energy mix, and in particular the Basrah Gas Company, which has ambitions worth several $1 billion to expand its capacity to process and transport gas, which goes largely to the domestic market in Iraq, the people there, LPG to power their lives, but also for export as well. So we spoke to Malcolm Mays, the managing director of the Basrah Gas Company, about their plans as well as a recent agreement with the IFC for a loan to help them realize their ambitions. Malcolm, thanks for being with us today. Basrah Gas Company, it's a fascinating story with regards to Iraq's power capacity, its natural resources, and it's a company that would be classed as midstream in the energy chain, because you're taking gas produced at the three huge fields in the south of Iraq and then processing it and passing it on to the customers for end use. So, maybe you can give us a little bit of a flavor of where Basrah Gas Company is at the moment.
Thank you, Mustafa. Yeah, so the Basrah Gas Company is set up to capture the gas that comes out of the three upstream fields, so Zubair, Rumaila, and West Kurna. The contracts that the government has with the upstream operators are really for just liquids, and gas is a byproduct of their operations. So where we fit in is BGC has a license to capture that gas and process it and supply dry gas into the natural gas grid, which goes to power consumption for Basra and beyond. We also managed to recover LPG, barbecue bottle fuel, which also gets sold in Iraq. We supply about 80% of that market in Iraq, plus we export. And we also recover some light condensates. So it's a gasoline type mixture that we recover and then we export as well. So our operations reduce the environmental footprint of the upstream. They help protect the environment, and we serve a useful purpose in terms of generating electricity for the people of Iraq.
So I'll pick up, Malcolm, on that point about the environment. So for those that may not realize that the gas is a byproduct of the production of oil in southern Iraq, and up to when the Basrah Gas Company was formed, sort of eight years ago or so, that gas was just burnt off, what they call flaring, and that was essentially not only a waste of a important resource, but was bad for the atmosphere, bad for the environment. So you're obviously supplying power to the local market, much needed power in terms of LPG and natural gas, but also you're giving an option for not flaring, essentially, for reducing that impact on the environment.
Yeah, so it's correct. So BGC is a joint venture that was created or came into operation in 2013, and our license, our market space is to capture that waste gas from the upstream operators, as you said. And their alternative is to either vent it, so methane and ethane, etc., would be vented into the atmosphere, or it would be poorly burnt in various kinds of flares. And so by us capturing that gas, we're able to extract the components that are useful for the community. And in particular, in the largest sort of volume that we recover is natural gas, which is about 80% of the total volume that comes out of the upstream. And that gets directed to power stations in Iraq. They're not owned or operated by BGC, but we supply them with natural gas. and they burn it in, the most efficient way that they can, and that is far more environmentally sensitive than just sort of flaring or venting where the production happens in the upstream. And the three partners that are in BGC are the South Gas Company, which is an Iraq government company, Shell, and then Mitsubishi. And the benefits of having Shell and Mitsubishi is they bring sort of the latest technology for gas processing, gas capture into Iraq. And so we try to do what we do as effectively as we can with as little environmental impact.
So recently the Iraqi government announced billions of dollars worth of planned investments in the energy sector. $3 billion of that's going to go towards expanding the capacity of the Basrah Gas Company. I mean, what's the plan looking down the line for what you hope will occur?
Yeah, so in sort of rough numbers, we capture today about 900 million standard cubic feet of gas a day. And over the next 5 years, we're taking that gas capture to around about 1,400 million standard cubic feet a day. So that's a 45% increase in gas capture and gas processing over the 5-year period. To do that, we as BGC will be spending $3 billion US, and that's the announcement that you referred to. So that is our approved business plan, $3 billion, and that money goes into constructing some more gas processing plants. They're referred to as BNGL Train 1 and Train 2. They're north of Basra, very large sort of manufacturing processing facilities. And it also goes into additional gas capture. So we build smaller plants next to the upstream facilities, and we capture the gas that they produce. Essentially, we suck the gas from their system. And so the $3 billion is a combination of the large processing plants that we're investing in, and also the more localized gas capture stations. And we also are negotiating with the government of Iraq to have access to additional gas, which is outside of our current license area, and that would see us invest up to another $1 billion sort of towards the end of our plan, and probably 1 year after the end of our 5-year plan. So we have a very large sort of portfolio of investments going forward.
And to simply put it, the increase in your operations, the increase in your capacity, would result in less flaring, more gas going to the local domestic market, and then potentially for export, helping to relieve some of the power shortages the Iraqis are experiencing, but also giving them the chance to earn more in terms of export revenues.
Absolutely correct. So our investments to date have got us to around about 900 million standard cubic feet a day, and we've captured about 110 million tons of CO2 or CO2 equivalent so far since 2013. So we've invested heavily, we've had good results, and we intend to keep investing at much the same rate over the next 5 or 6 years, and we will increase our capacity by 40-45%. We also will increase our rate of CO2 capture. So that rate will increase at about, from memory, an additional 9 million tons of CO2 per year above what we're already capturing. Today, we capture, as BGC, about 65% of all of the gas that is generated by the upstream. And over the next 5 years, we will take that to close to 90% of the gas that is available to be captured. So it's a heavy period for us over the next 5 years, a lot of investment, a lot of complexity, but we're up for the challenge as an Iraqi company, and we will get it done.
It's exciting times, but I kind of look at what's been happening in particular since sort of the tail end of 2019, early 2020, and it's not been the easiest of trading environments in Iraq in general. You various regional tensions spilling over into the country between Iran and the US, but then more recently there's been unrest. The protest movements, and in particular in southern Iraq around Basra, you've had quite a bit of unrest. You've had activists targeted. There's been a real spillover of tension and dissatisfaction. A lot of it related to sort of basic quality of life, which includes sort of access to power. How does that sort of wider tapestry affect your ability to, I guess, tell your story, which is a really positive one, but also when it comes to talking to investors, outside investors?
Yeah. So what I'll do is I'll break your question down into two parts. One is about how does BGC manage in an environment with the ups and downs of oil prices, ups and downs of gas prices, and the financial constraints of Iraq. And the other is the stability or otherwise of southern Iraq and the people who live there. So BGC has a high exposure, or had a high exposure, to its largest customer. So commercially, our exposure is to the Iraqi government or all of its various departments. And they are the largest purchaser of our products. And when the oil price or the gas price goes down, as it did in 2019, 2020 due to COVID, the government's capacity to pay us goes down because they have reasonably fixed costs and they're getting less revenue. And if they do manage to pay us, they pay a lot less because the oil prices or gas prices are lower. And so we've run into that issue. So during this period where we have quite a heavy investment, you talked about the $3 billion of investment that we have worked closely with the International Finance Corporation, the IFC, and their consortium of private banks. And through that work, we have managed to secure a large loan for the next 5 years, which allows us to ride through any potential ups and downs in oil prices or ups and downs in the Iraqi government's ability to pay our bills. So we can continue the investments and we can continue to get more and more access to export markets for our LPG and for our condensate. And in turn, those markets, those international markets, provide us with access to hard currency exchange on sale of our products. So that's how we're managing the sort of the commercial risk that you raised. In terms of the community stability or otherwise, I'm sitting here today just north of Basra. We are an Iraqi company. We are based in Basra. The vast majority of our employee base of 5,000 people actually live in Basra. They have family in Basra. And so to be honest with you, when you're here, it doesn't feel like the community is unstable. It doesn't feel like there's any great threat to BGC. We're an integral part of the community. This community in Basra is very welcoming. And so I guess I can't agree with the way you painted the picture about what stability is like in southern Iraq, albeit there are aspirations from the community to have access to more power, to have access to more services, whether they be medical or education. And in reality, this is a community that is recovering its pride and itself from decades of war and international sanctions. But the community is moving forward, and our role in that is to create employment, obviously, and to create energy and gas for the production of electricity, all of which enables the society to get back to where it used to be as a pillar of development in the region.
Can you put a figure on that IFC loan amount?
Absolutely. So we have secured a loan of $360 million through the IFC and 8 international banks as a consortium. So that's a sizable amount of money and will help the stability of our financial investments.
To pick up the point of the reasons behind that loan that you mentioned, clearly the IFC and the banks that it's involved with wouldn't put that money down if they didn't believe in the outlook for Basrah Gas Company and energy in general. And the wider picture could be, I mean, the oil price is in the 70s. It's been fairly stable recently, and it's connected to gas prices, as you pointed out. And there's a lot of outlook saying that the oil prices could hit $80 or more. Plus, you've got sort of the wider stability that the OPEC Plus alliance is bringing to global markets at the moment. So I can imagine that the things, despite our discussion about whether there's the local instability or not and how that affects things, clearly the wider energy picture is a little bit better now than it was perhaps a year ago under COVID.
I would agree. I think at one point there in the last year and a half, oil sort of hit zero or negative in some parts of the world. It certainly is much better for our industry when oil prices are above $50 a barrel. Gas is priced off oil. However, I've been in this industry for decades, and prices go up and prices go down. I would like to be able to think that myself or others could forecast it, but I think every time we've tried, we're wrong. The world does what it does, and so our focus is on thinking through how to manage what could inevitably come, which is why we worked very hard with the IFC to put in place the loan. And we have some other sort of instruments, some commercial instruments, which we also enacted to help our stability. I hope that the oil price, as the managing director of BGC, I hope that the oil and gas price remains buoyant through the period. As a consumer of gasoline, and obviously I would like it to go lower. But I think a healthy oil price above 50 is good for the stability of our business. It allows us to invest, and in turn, it allows us to help the Basra community and the general Iraq community get more gas for electricity, and the community to develop where we're back to the point where it used to be.
I mean, there are larger discussion at the moment is of energy transition and what that looks like. We talked a little bit earlier about sort of the environmental impact, but natural gas products are seen as a really important part of any future energy mix. People are talking about solar or wind or nuclear, but it feels like for some time now we've been talking about gas being the energy source of the future. And is that the way you guys see it from your position?
So I think globally, the world is going through a very public transition away from hydrocarbon fuels or coal, oil, burning wood, etc., and moving in the direction of renewables. The amounts, the sheer scale of the investment that will take is mind-boggling. At a global level, and that same sort of picture can migrate down into any individual country, including into Iraq. And these changes, whilst I think we would like them to happen overnight, they're really changes that will happen, I think, over decades. And in the meantime, for the people of Basra, the people of Iraq, I don't think it's fair and reasonable for them to sit around and just wait until those investments have reached the point where they can have electricity at night. So BGC recovering gas and directing it into the power stations, I think is a transition step for decades for the country. And I know for a fact that there are companies that are looking to invest in Iraq to build solar plants. Some of them were waiting to see how our debt deal with the IFC would progress, and they have expressed now enthusiasm that they will be able to get lines of credit to invest in Iraq. So I think what BGC is doing is the right thing, that we're capturing the gas from the upstream, so it's not being wasted. We're directing it for a useful purpose in the community. The Basra and Iraq population is developing with the electricity that comes from that gas. The money that is flowing from the industry or the broader industry in Iraq can then be used to bring in more renewables. And over time, a transition will occur and the society will develop in the way that they want to develop. But it's not something that we wake up tomorrow morning and it's done. It's something that, progressively, year after year, decade after decade, a direction will occur, not only in Iraq, but I think in most countries around the world.
Malcolm, forgive me if this is overly simplistic analysis of things, but it feels like that there's almost two strands here. There's what's going on in Iraq and Basra from the point of view of energy, from the vantage point that you have being on the ground and seeing how things work day to day. And then there's a lot of noise outside that looks at Iraq through a certain prism, which partly is the legacy of the last couple of decades. And people are tending to focus that Iraq's energy future is somehow linked to what happens between Iran and the US when they negotiate a deal. But to me it sounds like actually there are facts on the ground that will continue regardless of what people might think in Washington or elsewhere as to what is significant. And when you're talking to whether it's the IFC or investors or your customers, the government of Iraq, does it feel like you just get on with your job and that's what you need to do and you know exactly what the outcome is to kind of meet the requirements of the people of Iraq?
Absolutely. So the people of Basra are very hospitable, well educated, and they have the same development desires that other people from other countries have. They want their children to go to the best school. They want access to computers and TV and the internet, and all of the things that people who live in developed countries would want. The hard fact of life when you're in Basra, when you're working for BGC, is there really is gas that is available today, and there are people that want power today, and they want to improve their lives. In this part of Iraq, I don't see or feel on a day-to-day basis any of the geopolitics that you talked about. There are simply real human beings who have needs, and we can capture gas, process it, and meet those needs today. And over time, it's most likely that we would also move to support some of the transition or the energy transition agenda over time. That's the reality that we face every day. It's not for us a geopolitical game.
Malcolm Mays, Managing Director of Basrah Gas Company, thanks so much for being with us.
Not a problem. Thank you very much for your time.
That's it for today. All that remains to thank our production team, Arthur Edison and Aisha Khan, and you all for listening. Please do join us again next time.